Mistakes are the growing pains of wisdom. William George Jordan. DZ Tribe, Josh, Thomas, really glad to have you. To make sure you don't miss another episode, I want to make sure that you follow and subscribe on Apple and or Spotify. Also, if you're looking to better understand how you get stuff done, head on over to dozonedna.com and take our personality profile assessment built specifically for busy entrepreneurs just like you. It's going to show you how to build your world around you for optimal performance. Once again, that's dozonedna.com. Today's guest is Gentry Chittister. Gentry is the CEO and founder of Elite Closers after being responsible for over $40 million in high-ticket sales. He has started a high-performance sales placement and recruiting agency to help companies scale past 7 figures and beyond. Gentry, welcome to the Do Zone. Say what's up to the tribe and tell us something you believe is the key to getting stuff done that most people wouldn't think of.
Yeah, what's up, tribe, family? I'm excited to be here, Josh. I appreciate you having me. What I would say, that first thing that came to mind when you asked that question is just enjoying what you do. I think for me, I just my background of working jobs that I absolutely hated, where I would just like wake up and the first thing I was like, man, I gotta go to this job again, and then I found, sales and what I do now. And it's like playing a video game for me almost, where it's like, I do it because I love it. So really doing what you're passionate about and finding something that doesn't necessarily feel like work. What I is the number one key to help me get stuff done and just want to do it more than like force yourself to.
Man, that's such a strong message. And I love the fact that you said, hey, my job's like a video game to me, dude. Like I get up and I just want to run up them points. And I think that there's a lot to be said about that. I ask that question of every guest and I never know what they're going to say. Some people struggle with it. Some people have like, oh yeah, it's this thing, but it's always the thing that matters most. And you said, hey, enjoying what I do. Nobody said that before. And so elaborate on that job that you got up every morning and thought, I hate this. You don't have to tell me what it was. You don't have to like rat out your boss, but why did you hate it?
I don't want this to sound like corny or cliche, but I was doing a like solar installation and roofing. So I was actually, I was trying to get into solar sales, but the company I had connected with was like, hey, we don't need anyone on the sales floor, but we need people to install. So I thought it was a way in, just like any company kind of promises you ways to move. So there's lots of solar companies, so you'll have to find out which one. But I just remember it's absolutely not something I was in love with. And then two, every time I would get up, it was just like the potential, right? The ceiling was already there when I got up, right? It was like, hey, you're gonna make $18 an hour and there you go. And so it's like, all right, the most I can work in a day is 12 hours. So kind of like you said, like racking up those points, there was a certain amount I would hit every day, no matter what. And then on top of that, it's some of the hardest work you're ever doing. You're on top of a roof. And I remember this one specifically. I'm just sitting on the roof and my wife had just had our baby. I was like, dude, I'm going to fall off this roof and die and like leave my kid. And I was like, and I'm doing it for 18 an hour. So just stuff like that where, got blessed, found my path now. And every time I get up now, I get to work from home. I have that blessing of working from home. So I get to see my wife and kid every day. So, it was rough at the time, but those times that in the same breath give me so much perspective now to what I currently do. But again, just has changed the way like I know that feeling, waking up and just being like, man, this is not what I want to be doing, to the feeling I have now. It's just been the greatest thing for me personally.
And for those of you out here listening now, I'm sure that you can relate to what Gentry is talking about here. Some of you may have woken up this morning thinking, if I have to go to this job one more damn time. Maybe this morning you're listening to this podcast and you're like, screw it. That's it. Gentry said I could quit, and you're going to do it. That's cool, man. But you really put it in perspective there, because you said, hey, I'm risking my life. I'm going to fall off this roof and die. I'm going to leave my kid without a father, all for $18 an hour. That hits hard, man. Because, well, $18 an hour is not much.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah. And it's definitely not worth your life.
No,
You
not at
know,
all. But at the time, I was jumping from a job that was like $10 an hour, so $8 more was well, was
yeah,
50% income increase, right? So
right.
get you doing
Yeah.
some crazy things
You
sometimes.
know, as I was growing up, going to high school, I had a good friend of mine, and his brother was a roofer, and he ended up getting into it as well. We went in opposite directions. He went to do that, and I went to college. And it's interesting that you bring all this up, because you said, "Hey, I got this big pay raise," and sure, you can make more money doing that. But there is kind of, no pun intended, there is kind of a ceiling, right? See what I did there?
Yeah,
You see what I
I
did? Okay.
got you. I got you.
Yeah, so and it's kind of alluring. It's sexy because it pays you just enough to where you're like, it really doesn't make sense for me to do much else.
Yep.
And he got stuck there. Him and his bro, great guys. They got stuck there, and that impacted their life significantly. One of them did fall off a roof, broke some bones, and he's okay, but that impacted him, and he has a family, and he had to find a different way to provide for them.
Yep.
So you never really know, man. But you found your calling. And what was the difference between, oh God, I got to go to work today, and yeah, man, I can't wait to go to work today? And we could dive into what you do and all this stuff later, but what's the big difference there?
Oh, good question. I think for me, the biggest difference is just I've always wanted to help people. Yeah, I've always wanted to help people and make a difference. And so, you're sitting on roofs and the beating sun, you're just sweating your brains out, and not to not to take shots at anyone, but typically the people who are getting solar have money already, so you're just like another toy. You're kind of like you're their servant, right? So we're what cutting their light bill so they can make more money is how I kind of looked at it, and I was like, man, like it's not something they really like need, right? It's just kind of like I was a like a extra thing they could get pretty much. And um I just didn't feel like, people talk about impact, and that's where it was for me. Like I didn't feel like the impact was there. And I knew I wanted something different, but I think, what you're saying, I don't want to, if you're married or not, don't blame me if you quit your job today, but but I just think like
You heard it here, folks. Quit your job. Gentry will take care of you. He's going to hire you to find your calling.
no, I wish it worked that way. But yeah, I think like that was the thing is I knew I didn't want to be there. I didn't really feel like I was making an impact. The guys I was working with, I had one good buddy there, but everyone else, I wasn't a roofer by heart. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just I had no roofing experience. So I was the guy who was like crawling on all fours on the roof because
Oh
I was
yeah, that
I
would
was
totally
gonna,
be me.
yeah, and then everyone's like running and jumping and just,
Yeah.
give me crap, especially at the
I'm
beginning.
like
So
I'm like doing the spider man, like, no, no, I don't want to
that
look down. Like
that was the
I got
first day, man.
one time, I got a lot of friends who are roofers. I don't know how they do it, but one time I shadowed a guy, and he's like up there walking around, and it's like walks all the way up to the ridge, and it's like, oh man, it's beautiful up here. You should check it out. And I'm like, plastered.
Yeah,
I'm like, no, man, I can't even stand up. No thanks.
that was me to the T, man. I was my first day I wore boots and everything, and they're like, man, you got to wear different shoes.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the impact, man. I just didn't feel like I was, really helping anyone other than, providing, which was the main reason I did at the start for sure.
So what's the transition? So you don't like this job. You're like, okay, I've had enough of this. It's time to do something else. How did you pivot?
Yeah, I also before that I had been doing like sales at a call center, kind of like Wolf of Wall Street, like 100 people, in a center, just on your headset, just calling all day long. Um, and then I got into the solar gig, and then from there, because I had had some sales background, I had recently been looking for sales in solar. That's when I then found remote closing, which, they were like, hey, man, you can do this from home. And that was like the number one thing where I was like, oh, man, like from a roof to my own house where I can see my wife and kid every day. And again, like I genuinely had those thoughts where I was like, I'm not gonna make it home today. Like I'm gonna fall off this roof. Like what
Mm.
you just said, like I'm standing on top of the roof, the wind blows and my whole body's like shaking like a kite. It's like I genuinely believe that. And so when they're like, man, yeah, you can work from home, I was like, I'm done. And that was 2019 where like working from home was still like
Yeah,
very rare. It wasn't the
yeah,
norm where like since COVID, it's kind of a little bit
uh-huh.
more normal. It was kind of like everyone was still at the office, or every, position I had looked into was like, yeah, you got to come into the office. And so that was like what sold me into it. And then um just talking to new people every day, and like genuinely talking to them though. Like when I was at Comcast, it was 5 minutes, seal the deal, write it, go.
Hmm.
Remote closing, hour, 2 hour long conversations with people about dreams and goals that they had, or what was going on there. And to me, that was what I'd been looking for. And that human element to it is what I love more than anything, for sure.
That's great, man. And so, are you able to divulge the first sales job that you had and what you were selling and a little bit about that experience?
Like my first remote sales job, or like my first sales
Yeah.
job ever?
No, like as this transition away from roofing and
Yeah.
solar installations, to the
Yeah.
extent that you're able to disclose, tell us a little bit about what your journey through that.
Yeah. So the first remote sales job I had was selling for my brother's fitness company. It was called Fit Warrior. And we were selling like high ticket fitness coaching programs. And it was, again, there was a learning curve because, just like anyone starting, it was a $3,800 fitness program for like a 4 month program. And I was like,
And this
man,
is this is Tanner Chittister.
yeah, this is Tanner. So
Yeah.
Tanner Chittister is my brother. And
So for everybody listening, we actually had Tanner on the podcast a few months back,
yeah,
and so this is our first sibling sequel
let's
of the Do
go.
Zone podcast. Yeah, and there's I think you have like 5 or 6 more brothers and sisters or something, right? So let's just get them all
Yeah,
on.
we got a lot. We got four sisters and two brothers, seven of us in total. So
Nice.
plus my parents, we got a full baseball team.
That's right. Yeah, we'll get them. We'll have like a whole like Chittister week. We'll have like a feature for each one.
I don't know if everyone could take that. You might lose your minds a little bit, but yeah. So he had started like an online fitness company, and pretty much approached me with the opportunity. I didn't start full time right away. I started part time because you're like, man, I don't know about this, but after like 1 or 2 days, it was like, all right, this is real, and people will buy, so let's go. And then it's just gone up ever since. So, but yeah, like again, the number one thing that like pushed me over the edge was being able to be at home. That was like the bread and butter about it.
That's clutch, man. I've worked from home for almost 15 years now, and it comes with its perks, right? I can sit here and do my podcast in this little office that I built, and I can wear my Incubus shirt, and nobody's going to be like judging me or anything. But the one drawback I've noticed is, when you're sitting at home all the time, you miss out on a lot of social opportunities unless you like very intentionally create them. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's sometimes it's kind of isolating, but there's more good than bad. That's for sure. You're not standing on a roof.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that 1,000%. It's kind of funny because uh I've definitely looked at different office spaces, and so I can see the intent behind, office spaces. And I think one thing for me was just separating work in my house once I did start working from home. So you just mentioned like you have an office, and I didn't understand that. I was taking calls just like sitting in my bedroom starting
Mhm.
out, and then I was like, man, this I felt like I was in work like all day long, just
Yeah, it's
even
the
being in the same
weirdest
room.
thing. Yeah, you start like your brain starts associating the two things and mixing them together. And you have this
Yeah.
really stressful call with this one customer that just pisses you off. And you're just like, "Ah," the rest of the day. And you're sitting there and it's like 8:30 and you're like, why am I still mad? Because
The
you're still in the
energy
same
just
environment,
Yeah.
homie.
That energy is just still sitting in that room. And I remember, so that was something I had to like learn. But once like you kind of once I got my own space, I should say, and kind of made like office rules in the house, it made it pretty smooth. But I agree in terms of like you do miss out on like talking to people and kind of like that human interaction. But I think for me, I was like so ready to go to the opposite that now that I've been there for 5 years now or so, it's
Yeah.
starting to creep backwards. Like, man, yeah, you miss people a little bit.
And so let me ask you, as you were getting into this and you started learning how to sell, what would you say for those of us who are out here listening who are salespeople? We sell on the phone, we sell in person. What would you say are some of the key strategies or tips that ultimately helped make you successful as a salesperson? Because that company blew up real fast. I mean, it's hard to not know who Tanner is, and I would suspect you had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think so. So yeah, we our first year we did 1 million, then we went 1 to 10, and now over 50 million in that company. So lots of calls. There's lots of calls, thousands of them. I think the number one thing, Josh, personally, and it's something that I just think you learn through doing things like the roofing job, but it's just a resiliency to hearing the word no and what you're just saying. Like, if every time you get no or you get those super negative calls where it just absolutely just like takes you all the way to the floor, man, just burns you out. And so it's almost to where like the no's and yeses, people talk about this, and it's for me, it's the true thing. Like the same way when I get a yes is sometimes the same way I feel like when I get a no, and it's just like, all right, on to the next one. So resiliency for me, and then working with like reps and working with business owners has been the biggest thing. I've seen people who like really excel and press forward, and then people who really struggle. And then essentially working with my brother, I mean, when you're brothers, they can be a little bit more at your throat when you're not performing or not. And so anyone who was on the sales team with me can attest. I was on the West Coast, and we run all our meetings off Central. So we'd have meetings 6 a.m. my time, and I mean, I'm just getting absolutely ripped to shreds 6 a.m. in the morning. So it wasn't always sunshines and rainbows, but it just the resiliency of sticking through that and not letting it, take me off my path, because there was a few times where I was like, man, this is getting rough. And then, but again, just had to learn to steady it out and understand like tomorrow's always going to come around if you do what you're supposed to.
There's a lot to be said about being resilient, and you mentioned that several times. What does that word mean to you? And because that stood out in what you were just describing. When you say resilient, help us understand, because I think that that's a lesson that that's something everybody needs to plant in their head. That's a chip everyone needs.
Yeah, for me, it's not like when I think of resiliency, I more think of like a picture of just like a feeble, like scrawny dude just getting pushed to the floor and continuing to stand up, even though he's got like an ogre in front of him. And for me, that was like a literal sense. I'm the youngest of the three boys that we have, and both my brothers played college football, and we're like 230 and 240, just jacked out of their minds. And so they got all the muscles, I got all the looks. But so anyways, that just that's the picture I have in my mind. You just get pushed down, get back up, try it again. Until I wouldn't say like getting pushed down stops, but just you keep standing up so they eventually go away. That's what it means to me, just continuing to press on even though you're getting you know pushed around a little bit.
Yeah, I love it. I love the imagery as well. I'm sure that every single one of us in some capacity have felt that in our lives. And again, going right back to one of the first things that we opened up this conversation with, there are some people listening right now that probably felt that today.
Mm.
There are some people right now who will probably feel this after they finish this podcast, or maybe when they go home tonight. And it's important to understand that you don't have to take the place that somebody puts you.
Yeah.
I think that's really what you're saying. If you don't want to be there, keep standing up, because eventually they're either going to go away or you're going to be strong enough to stand up on your own.
Yeah. And I would say like it never stops, like not to go down this rabbit hole, but it's like I just kind of look at Elon Musk right now. He's like one of the richest men in the world, and he's just getting blasted from each side, and he's trying to do some like, whether you agree with it or not, right? He's trying to do some like the most productive things, or like be extremely proactive and like what he believes, you could say, at least, and he's just getting ripped to shreds in a lot of aspects, and some not, right? But I think that's the thing too, is like you have to understand it's never going to stop. Like it's going to be something that you have to continue to press on, and I don't want to say enjoy it, but just becomes where, again, it doesn't knock you off your course, right? Where like when I first started, I would have a terrible call. I remember, I still share this day, but the people I have this hardest time with are people from Chicago. I don't know why, but I one of the worst calls I ever had was this guy from Chicago, and he was just ripping me apart on the call. And I was trying my best to deal with it, but yeah, I think that's the thing too, is like it's going to continue to happen, or it will ever be a thing. You just gotta learn to, like, again, kind of enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. New Yorkers for me. Yeah. That's like every time I get on the phone with somebody from New York, not so much anymore, but like first couple of years, it's just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, the way this guy's talking to me, I just feel really intimidated. And, you know, it's like I'm walking here, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even have a New York accent. Sorry for people from New York that I just insulted you or something. Well, hey, Gentry, let's take a look at what's going on in that beautiful noggin of yours. Let's do the Do Zone diagnostic. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Awesome. So, this is a series of 5 questions I ask every guest so that we can see how your brain ticks, soak up all the knowledge that we can. Just rapid fire, first thing that comes to mind. Number one, what's one thing you do, Gentry, that keeps you focused on your goals?
Remember the past. Remember where I started, where I came from every day. Always, like that story that I just shared, I think about it every day. I think about staying on that roof, looking over the ledge, think I was going to fall every day. Um, and so sometimes the problems that I have, I just remember that, and I'll take sitting in this chair in an AC room every day the rest of my life.
I love that.
Mm.
And number two, follow-up question, how do you get back on track when you lose that focus?
For me, it's again going back to remembering where you came from, but then looking at how far you've come and creating what I would call a win folder. So anytime I've gotten a positive message for a client, I think we hear this a lot, like you create a win folder, create a journal, and we hear it so much that we almost become numb to it. But that's
Mm.
something that I literally will go back to. And I have messages from when I first started, like early 2018, of people like, hey man, like thanks so much for X, Y, or Z. So remembering like where you started, but then also looking how far you've come, because sometimes I feel like, man, like there's so much more for me to do. We have a lot in the fire right now in terms of business and what's going on. And so it's just so easy to look at like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And so, like you said, you feel like you fell off track going to the next thing, but if you look behind you, you're still on track from where you want to move from. Have been like the two big factors for me.
Oh, that's great. Win folder. Yeah. That's that's a $1 million idea right there, man. Nobody's ever said that to me before. I appreciate
Oh,
that.
yeah, I do it on my phone. So I just have an album on my phone. It literally says wins, and I
Mm.
screenshot, and then I go, because your phone has 13,000 pictures, whatever.
That's
So
right.
that's right what I do.
That's right. And so Gentry, who is your support group and how do they keep you accountable?
Oh yeah, it's a good question. First and foremost, it's my wife. wife. My wife is absolutely awesome. I heard this quote the other day. It's like 90% of your happiness or misery comes from the person you marry. So I'm blessed to be married to an amazing woman who supports me through a lot and has picked me up a lot of the time. Second would be my brother. Um, you know, I'm blessed, definitely to have a brother, and I know not everyone has that, right? So, um, it could be a best friend, something like that, but it's been my older brother, and then third is ultimately gonna be my Lord and Savior, man. Just remaining steadfast there and focusing on like my faith, definitely.
Nice. I love that. And how do you approach a difficult project that you're not sure how to complete?
Sorry if I'm not answering these faster. Maybe I should be faster.
No, you're doing great. Don't change a thing.
So sorry, question one more time.
Yeah. How do you approach a difficult project that you're not sure how to complete?
Yeah. Oof. I think break it up into bite-sized pieces for me. I definitely someone who can get lost in like the big picture when I feel like I have 13,000 steps ahead of me. I'm like looking at step 10,000, I'm on step 1. So just focusing, like breaking it down into bite-sized pieces, or saying like, okay, I'm just going to learn or do this part of it today and I'll come back to that tomorrow. Um and then being willing to reset my timeline a little bit. That was a hard thing for me to learn, where I was like, man, I would need it done by Friday, but being willing to give myself a little bit of grace in terms of moving it maybe to Tuesday and not letting that just crush, what I believed in
Mm.
myself or my confidence, where that used to happen. Those two things have really helped me with major projects that we take on.
Yeah, not being rigid. That's
Yeah.
that is a death trap to entrepreneurship. Is this has to be done by this? If not, you failed. But
Yeah.
in reality, it's a lot more gooey than that for the most part.
Yes, for
You're
sure.
dealing with human beings and not robots. Yeah, you got to accept that. Last question, Gentry. What is the number one pro tip that you would give to somebody looking to get more stuff done in less time?
More stuff done in less time. I would say categorizing categorizing top to bottom, like most important to least important, and then removing things that are keeping you busy but aren't taking you far, or aren't really moving the needle for you throughout your day. um I think for me, like just as an example, I was working out 2 hours, and at the end of the day I was like, I really just need one, but I was pushing 2 because that's just what I had done for so long. It was kind of just like, again, I was just caught in like a little revolving door. Just
Mm,
I've done it for so long, and then I got an hour back in my day, which I was like, oh man, like that was pretty simple. You hear like waking up earlier, things like that, but just optimizing, categorizing, list of top to bottom. Um, and then I think that there's that, cliche where it's sometimes a little less is a little more, and so really optimizing, and when you're working, like truly be working, not convincing yourself like scrolling on Instagram, scrolling on Twitter, and you're like, oh, but I was at my desk, I was working, when you really didn't do anything. Um, so those would be my tips there.
you speak in my language, man. This is a show about productivity, and that's exactly right. One of the concepts that you nailed just a minute ago is something that was developed by James Clear, who's the author of a book called Atomic Habits, which should be required reading for any entrepreneur. And he talks about the concept of motion versus action. And motion is all of the things that you do to keep yourself moving and feel like you're busy and getting stuff done, but it doesn't actually, you're not really doing anything.
Yep.
Action are the things that lead to a result.
Yep.
And we spend a tremendous amount of time as human beings in motion. And that motion makes us feel good it makes us feel productive without the discomfort of action
Mm.
which creates uncertainty because we're moving towards a result, right? But
Yeah.
only that action is what creates a result. And you nailed it right there, man. That's exactly what, I promise, guys, we didn't plan this. That just came out naturally. So
Yeah, yeah. And if I can, like, even one more just like
yeah,
personal
please.
example is like, I remember I'd be coaching clients and I would sit on the phone with my clients for 2 hours versus like the one that we had originally scheduled for. And I was telling myself like, oh, I'm giving them like additional help. I'm over serving, but it was really just a facade or like lie that I was telling myself. So I didn't have to do that almost like a little bit more uncomfortable like project or step. Or I like I hate setting up like systems and stuff. I'm not a big systems guy. And so I'd be like, oh, like I'll just do this and then that covers the hours. So yeah, I could not agree more. And that's the truth for sure.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And so you leveraged this sales job that you picked up with your bro and you turned that into another business opportunity that you are now the leader of. Talk to us about the transition from Gentry, the sales pro, to Gentry, the sales leader.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a fun one. It's a kind of interesting story, but when I got in, like around 2018, we started selling fitness, and then we got that to $1 million in a year, and kept scaling it. And then other, fitness coaches or other trainers that were going online started asking like, "What are you guys doing?" So then we naturally created a coaching business. From that, coaching online trainers, and now it's expanded to where we coach, pretty much general business owners across the board online. And I love sales. Like my background has I've done tons of sales gigs, like even when I was earlier in my life, and I just always wanted to again help people. Like that was my number one thing. But I thought the way to do that was gonna be like being a doctor or a lawyer, the common ways. And then I realized like, hey, when you sell something or sell someone something, right? Like, and it genuinely can help them. That's what I've been looking for, and it honestly moved way faster, right? Like 1 hour, 2 hour, you're just moving people through, right? Um, so, anyways, as we were growing the coaching business, I saw people who were like struggling in sales or had like mindset issues around sales, or, were getting all these calls but weren't converting them. So in 2019, I actually approached my brother Tanner at the time. I was like, hey, dude, like, I want to create a sales division for our coaching company. Like, what do you think? And at that time, I was still, I would say like earning my stripes. And so it got shot down pretty quick. It was just like, no, we don't need that. Like, I know best. Like, just stick in your lane. And he was the boss. So it's like, all right, fair enough. Um, and then, 2 more years wise. So come around late 2020, early 2021. Um, honestly, I was just like, again hitting that ceiling again a little bit, where I still loved what I was doing, but I wanted to do more of it. And then I wanted to help people understand my story, essentially. Like I really just wanted to start getting my story out there. And so I approached Tanner about it again, and he kind of shot it down again. So I was like, all right, man, like I think I'm gonna go out on my own. And so then I went out and then started building it. And then he kind of doubled back with me. He was like, hey man, like I kind of see the vision now. I see where you're going. So then we ended up being able to partner up on it a little bit, where it coincides with like what he does in his coaching. So when his coaches need help with sales or they need sales reps, I can help them there. And then vice versa, business owners that he works with who need sales help, pass it off to me. But yeah, it's been a from 2019, it's been a thought that I've had and wanted to do. But I'm grateful it didn't start in 2019, because I've over those 2.5 years that I stayed just in my lane, I just learned so much more and got I think a lot better in the way to teach it. Versus just like I had done it for about a year and a half when I wanted to first start in 2019. um so when I finally started, I was about 4 years into doing like full high ticket um sales, and I'm grateful for that. But that's kind of the way it all worked out. Started like the idea in 2019, shelved it, and then really brought it to life late 2021, early 2022.
That's great. So it's a brand new business. It's been around barely a year.
Yeah, but yeah, we just hit like our 8 month mark officially, like officially licensed and everything. But I was working on it since 2021, but like officially launched it like late 2021, early 2022. Yeah.
And quick hit tips. Somebody starting a new business. What were three things that you were not anticipating that you
Oof.
ran into when you
Yeah.
started this business that you had to overcome quickly?
Um. Yeah. I think for me, the first one was I was so used to being on the phone. I wasn't used to just like talking on camera to no one. Like that was something I had to get a little used to for sure. Second was like there's always more than what you think is behind the curtains, you know. Like in sales especially, you know, you see a lot of it but you don't know necessarily all the details. And then the third thing was for me, sales is such a fast-paced game at times, right? And so the third thing that I had to kind of prep myself for or overcome pretty quickly was just the patience. You know, once you sell, then you got to fulfill. And
Ah,
I
damn it.
was
Why
yeah,
do
I
you
was
have
kind of
why can't
wearing
I
all
just take
those
their money
hats
and
early on.
forget about them?
Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but that's what I had been doing for like I said, like 4 years is
Mhm.
selling and then put them to the fulfillment process already in place. So then once I started my own thing, I was like, oh, now I'm the one who's also fulfilling. Was definitely a little bit of a learning curve, but one I've really enjoyed and have a lot of fun in.
What do you see on the horizon for your industry in particular? Because it's something that kind of really took off. The
Yeah.
idea of teaching somebody how to be a phone closer,
Yeah.
appointment setting and closing. What do you see? And part of the thing, the reason that it caught fire was everybody went home and started working from home, and there were all these other
Yeah.
opportunities, COVID and all this. What do you see in the next 12 to 18 months for your industry in particular?
Man, I just think it's gonna get like busier. And what I've seen personally is it's gone from just maybe like smaller companies or you know big small companies that maybe you've never heard about to actually like major companies transitioning over and getting people, you know, talk to a few like major law firms, right, that are open to having remote closers, massive marketing companies that are open to it. And I think that's one thing, you know, COVID did is, you know, show a lot of people that production doesn't vary too much whether they were in the office or at home. Um, so I think it's gonna get bigger. It's just what industries is it gonna slide to and who's gonna be in the most need for it is the question.
That's right.
Mhm.
And so, what is the tell us about your service? Who's it for? Who's a good candidate to engage with you, and how can they connect?
Yeah, yeah. So my business is made up of really like a two-prong approach, excuse me. So we help online businesses that are around 50K a month or above. We help them either build an internal sales team or take their internal sales team that we have and raise KPIs, and then add on additional appointment setters, closers if they need to, or if it's someone who was like myself and maybe is like listening in, who's not only wanting to be more productive but is standing on a roof wishing they weren't there. We actually help them transition into remote closing, because I believe, you know, you asked me as far as starting a business, you know, my three things. I would say if I got a fourth, if you're wanting to start a business and you're willing to be patient, closing for 4 years. I was in a multiple eight-figure business. I was able to talk to some of the best people running ads, best people in tech setup. So when I started my own, I already knew the blueprint rather than starting from ground zero.
Mm,
Um, and I think there's a lot of people who have that entrepreneur spirit but are afraid to jump out on their own. So jumping into an established business is in my opinion the fastest way, right? You learn by doing, not by sitting, in my opinion. So that's the approach we have. So it's a sales coaching and recruiting company, and we work with all types of different brands and service based businesses and are absolutely loving it.
that's awesome. And who can engage, who should engage with you, and where can they go to find more?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way, you can just go to our website, so www.eliteclosers.com, or you can connect with me on Instagram just at Gentry Chittister. There's not too many Gentrys or Chittister, so I should be pretty
There's a
easy.
lot of Chittisters apparently.
Yeah, well, yeah, not a lot of Gentry Chittisters, we'll say that.
Okay.
So I'm pretty easy to find there. And then, yeah, I would say anyone who's wanting or needing help with building their sales team, wanting to get off the phones as a business owner, or have more appointments on their calendar. And then, like I said, anyone who's maybe in the corporate setting or corporate world, stuck in a job they're not loving, that is looking to transition to entrepreneurial world, but wants a little safer route, are going to be the people who we work with. But we have people all ages, man. My oldest client has been 70. My youngest client has been 18. And I love it. My goal is to help people for sure. Just like help people and help them hit their goals. And so, that's what I love about this offer as well. Is it's not the tightest one, right? It's open to quite a few people, and something that we're grateful for sure.
That's awesome. Gentry Chittister, everybody, thank you so much for being here and joining us and sharing your wisdom about how you get stuff done and how you transitioned into growing this business very quickly within a year. For those of you who are interested in learning more, you can go to eliteclosers.com to learn more about what Gentry offers. And you can also find them on Instagram at Gentry Chittister. And there's not too many of them, so it should be pretty easy to find. Once again, if you want to keep hearing great content like this, be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple or Spotify. And don't forget to get your own personal Do Zone DNA by visiting dozonedna.com. Until next time, remember, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. What are you going to do with yours?